Mr. Mayor, I'm going to keep this brief because we are all eager to hear from you, but I can't let the opportunity go by without complimenting you on the way you have responded to this health crisis in our city. You have done everything that we could ask of leadership in the city. It is in marked contrast to what's been done at the federal level. Your personal commitment to the issues and the people of Boston has been outstanding. And on behalf of everyone on the Green Ribbon Commission, I want to thank you for earning your stripes in this crisis. I'd also like to recognize Environmental Chief Chris Cook, who I know is with us. He has been a staunch ally in all of our efforts on the GRC, and we appreciate the contribution he's been making. Mayor Walsh, again, with thanks to you for the way you've responded. Let me turn it over to you for comments.
Let me first thank you, Amos. I truly appreciate your remarks and your compliments. It means an awful lot to me personally, but also I'm blessed. I have a great team here in the city of Boston that have done some great work, the entire team, and I want to thank them. I'll get into my remarks and talk a little bit about what they've done. And I agree with you, Chris Cook has been just simply amazing since he took this role over as the environmental chief here in the city. And prior to that, he took over a role running the Parks Department and was able to do so many outstanding things. And he's not bad for a guy that got an acting degree in college. He's sitting like he's sitting like he's sitting next to me. So you know, he's either really good at his job or he's a really good actor. So I want to thank him for his great work. Now, honestly, in all seriousness, he's a wonderful person, and I'm fortunate that he agreed to both those roles. So I want to thank him. I want to thank you, Amos, for your continued steadfast support in what you're doing with the Green Ribbon Commission. I want to give John Cleveland a shout out as well, and Amy Longsworth and the entire team of the Green Ribbon Commission. These are obviously extraordinary times, and to be able to continue to stay focused it's been amazing to see and to watch and to keep as we think about recovery here with coronavirus at the heart of it, equity, and at the heart of that is the environment. And I think we have real opportunities here. The one thing that this pandemic has presented us with is opportunities to deal with inequalities, to deal with racial disparities, racial health disparities, business disparities that we're seeing out in the communities. Low-wage workers and helping them, and the environment is another component of that. We can really take this as an opportunity. So I want to thank everyone for their great work in the past and the great work that we're going to do in the future. I was multitasking when Secretary Kerry was speaking. I was on a call with the City Council, but I was also listening to him. And I want to thank the Secretary for his amazing work on climate over the years, including during this pandemic. He truly has been a champion long before there were champions. So I want to thank you, Mr. Secretary, if you're still listening, for the great work you've done. And if you're not, we'll touch base with you and tell you. Kate Walsh, I know also spoke, and her leadership during the public health crisis has been remarkable. I don't even know where to begin or end. The BMC emergency room, creating opportunities for homeless people, working with us on every step of the way. Her staff being frontline staff, as well as we've seen, unfortunately, a little tick in violence here. And many of those victims that people who get shot and experience violence in the city end up at BMC as well. And they just haven't missed a beat at all. And I want to thank Kate and the entire team at Boston Medical Center for their incredible leadership during this crisis. Rebecca Hurst, congratulations and thank you for your work around the coastal resilience in closing Boston's equity gaps. I appreciate it. And I congratulate you on winning the 2020 Zuckerberg Endowed Leadership Prize. It's a testament to her leadership and your leadership, I should say, in climate justice, protecting marginalized populations. And I was on a phone call last night with Eric Garcetti, who's the mayor of Los Angeles, but also the president of the C40. And really, when we were in Copenhagen, one of the big themes was marginalized populations around the world, and understanding that we have them here too in Boston, but around the world, in some cases, people are far worse off than us. And we're fortunate to have folks like Rebecca doing amazing work. So thank you, Rebecca, for that. I know I'm doing a lot of thank yous, but I'm almost done with my thank yous, but I do have to get them in because it's important. Amos brought up nice words about me and what's happening right now in the city, but it's all of us doing it together, and it's important to recognize people. Bud and John, for your work on the Seaport study. I look forward to reviewing it. Thank you for that. Bob Brown, Boston University. Bob's part of the Mayor's Reopening Advisory Committee, but even more importantly than that, he's been a person that I've leaned on throughout this entire crisis, and he's been amazing to work with. So thank you, Mr. President, for that. The city staff who partner with the Green Ribbon Commission, I know they're on this call. Thank you for your work through this difficult times. We shut City Hall down about 2.5 months ago, and in my opinion, we haven't missed a beat. We've been continually working in different areas of making sure that we continue to move our city forward and helping people, vulnerable people, and moving our city, moving different populations forward. So I want to thank everyone. And the environment is a very, very important part of our mission here in the city of Boston. And when I say resiliency, all of what we do. Just a kind of a brief update. I'll go over high level numbers. In Massachusetts, we have had 94,220 people who've tested positive for coronavirus. 6,547 people have lost their life. We are the 4th highest state in the country for number of cases, the 3rd highest state in the country for number of deaths. Now, in the city of Boston, we have 12,588 people who've tested positive for coronavirus. 627 people have lost their life, and 6,189 people have recovered. I will say one thing about the numbers. I think our numbers in Boston, in the Commonwealth, and the deaths would be a lot higher if we didn't have such incredible medical institutions in our city. So I want to thank them all for the great work they've done. What these numbers mean is the numbers of new cases we're seeing day to day is going down, which is a good sign. The total positive rate amongst people who are being tested continues also to go down. So we're excited about that. We created a health inequities task force because in the very beginning, we saw African American and Black population in the city of Boston testing at a 44% rate of positives, which was a problem. And we saw high rates in the Latino community as well. And the inequities task force got together and started working to bring those numbers down. So we were able to tackle that issue pretty early on. And it's important that since that time, we've seen our total positive test rates continue to go down every day, pretty much, it seems like, which is good here in the city. We're cautiously optimistic about the trends. We've worked extremely hard to slow the spread of the virus. We're going to continue to do that every day. We continue to expand testing. We have, I believe, 21 locations around the city, 16 of which are in health centers, and one we have a mobile van. When I see we were collectively working together to expand testing. We want to make sure people understand the importance of physical distancing while we're testing as well. At the same time, we're mobilizing our entire city to provide safety nets to make sure families and seniors and our most vulnerable residents get the support they need. Some of the highlights of that work is shown on the screen. I think it's going to be shown on the screen right now. So I want to thank you for that. It's important that we remain vigilant through the reopening process. You'll see these numbers in front of you now. Just some of they're really amazing numbers. I just want to take a minute to go over them. The first one, the Resiliency Fund, we've raised $30.8 million from 6,000 different people. We had a goal of raising $10 million, and we raised $10 million in 72 hours in the very beginning of this. We've distributed 31,752 Chromebooks to our Boston students. They didn't leave school with them. We were able to deliver to them either at home or they picked it up at our food serving areas. We've served almost 1.2 million meals to children and families in the city of Boston in the last 3 months. 1.2 million meals at food sites. We've provided access on our library service. We thought our libraries 10 years ago, everyone was saying our libraries are gone in Boston. We have 22,816 online library accounts. We're seeing huge increases there. The PPE, with the city, this isn't the state. State's done their own work. We've been able to provide 950,000 roughly units of PPE to 224 partners. If you look at the story of the nursing homes, a lot of the deaths have occurred in nursing homes. We've been able to somewhat jump on top of that here in the city. We assisted the state in this, and we also provided hundreds of hours of staff to those nursing homes. We've distributed pamphlets to Boston's homes. We've done a lit drop. There's one number that's not on here. We've dropped 1 million pieces of literature in the very first weekend. We've provided information to almost 2 million people. You see that there. You know, there's been some amazing things here in the city. They're all a story. I was reading a story last night, I believe it was in the New York Times, that was talking about food insecurity and how people are going hungry in the streets of America. That didn't happen here in Boston. They were talking about how homeless people are dying on the streets of America. That didn't happen here in Boston. We were able to create over 1,000 beds. Kate Walsh was part of that, and some amazing people in creating 1,000 beds so that we could separate the homeless folks that needed physical isolation, physical distancing, folks that needed quarantine to be able to quarantine themselves so they didn't get the virus, or if they got tested potentially positive. And we created hospital beds. We built a hospital in 5 days. And no offense to New York, and I know there's some New Yorkers on the phone. They talked about the medical center in New York for about 3 weeks to a month before they built it. We built ours in 5 days in Boston. And that served over 700 and almost 50 people in that facility. It's about to be closed. We're going to keep the physical structures there in case we have a need for it later on down the road. But it's been some amazing numbers. And, you know, as mayor sitting in this role, looking at these sheets and looking at different things that happened, it can get emotional and overwhelming sometimes. So I just want to thank everyone who helped us. We are working with the state right now on a gradual phased-in reopening. Phase 1 plans reopen began on last Monday, the 18th, a week ago Monday, I should say, at some construction sites, manufacturing facilities, houses of worship, and, you know, hair salons, barber shops, and other things. We're reopening. What I look at reopening doesn't mean go back to normal. It means being vigilant, I should say, in our workplace and community spaces. Given the fact that Boston is a more densely populated city and the most dense in the state, and in New England at least, we're going to be opening our offices next week. Our offices at 25% capacity. The reason why I was 2 seconds late is I was going over the final draft guidelines that we're going to be giving out to office buildings to ask that their tenants follow the rules and regulations. We have clear guidelines in the workplace, including shift scheduling, asking as much shift scheduling as possible, asking as much work from home possible. We're asking people to pay attention to the older work population and people with pre-existing conditions. We don't want to set them up and put them in a situation where they're going to be dangerous. It's going to be dangerous for them. We're working on. We're going to be explaining physical spacing, PPE, cleaning protocols, ventilation, employee communication, and I'm going to be urging, and as the governor did over the course of the next several months here, to let as many employees work from home as whenever possible. I think it's really important that it is about stopping the spread. We're also working closely with our small businesses to make sure they have what they need to survive in these difficult times. Opening in a way that's safe, that allows them the opportunity to kind of get their business back, but also protect their workers and their customers. A large percentage of our businesses in Boston are owned by women, people of color, and immigrants. They're vitally important to the strength of our neighborhoods. I mean, I think when we think about business, we think about downtown or maybe the Copley Square, Fenway area, but, you know, in our neighborhoods, these small businesses are the lifeline in many of our neighborhoods. We want to make sure that none of them are shut out of reopening due to lack of access and resources. So we're working with them to try and help them as best as possible. The key to an equitable reopening here in Boston is about how do we provide opportunity and assistance. We've dedicated so far $13.5 million in supporting small businesses impacted by the COVID-19. That's what the city's done. State's done something and the federal government's done something. We've distributed $4 million to 1,100 small businesses through our Small Business Relief Fund. This focuses businesses in the most affected industries, including hospitality, personal care, arts and recreation, retail, healthcare, and other types of social assistance. The other day I announced the Reopen Boston Fund. It came up because when we talked about reopening beauty salons and barbershops, many in our neighborhoods, with the regulations that the state put in place, they couldn't open. They could maybe put one chair in there. So we started by talking about, do we build partitions and allow people to have them? And it turned into a $6 million grant program to help small businesses with safety measures, including buying personal protective equipment, installing those safety partitions to keep customers separated, and keeping employees safe. We want to talk about, we're working on managing outdoor spaces and working on helping approve for business use. How do we do that? We also created a new online resource to help small businesses understand the kinds of PPE they need. One of the things I'm concerned about, we're all concerned about, is scams, and making sure that businesses should check in and make sure that they're not scammed and they're buying the wrong masks and the wrong equipment that doesn't help them. We have we put live a website for businesses to access to see where to get PPE from trusted vendors. We went live, I think, last Friday. By Wednesday or Tuesday, today's Wednesday, by Tuesday, we had about 4,000 visits to that website. So people are using the resource, which is great. And we also are working on other supports we're offering, including technical assistance. And we have weekly conference calls for small businesses, people that might need information and help on different things. Just a couple more quick things here, and then I'll open up for questions. Equity is at the center of our recovery strategy, and equity is climate resiliency as well as we think about moving forward. We've been able to halt evictions until this crisis is over. We created a rental relief fund to help tenants who lost income due to the crisis, that can't make rent and do not qualify for relief or unemployment. We've secured agreements of the largest housing lenders in Boston to defer mortgage payments. It's been a huge help. Bank of America led us off there, and then many other banks and credit unions followed suit. We set up a hotline to help people struggle to get the access to the $1,200 federal stimulus package that many families need right now. We're doing targeted outreach to our immigrant communities. All of our materials are in 11 different languages. We have a big issue with undocumented immigrants and accessing food and accessing services and accessing programs and afraid to come. We're not turning anyone away here in the city of Boston. Everyone is treated the same, whether your family came over on the Mayflower or you came the other day on a plane. We're treating everyone the same. That's the way we should do it. As I mentioned earlier, we created the Health and Equities Task Force. Part of a couple big things that they're looking at doing, and that they've done, I should say, is expanded testing and treatment in the hardest hit areas. So that's something important. The importance of our planning and resiliency is going to be key. Already the coronavirus has taught us a lot about the importance of community resilience and about the importance of planning. These are the same values that also guide our work in climate action. It's about protecting people's health and safety. It's about investing now before a disaster strikes so that we're ready for whatever the future holds. And clearly we're not necessarily ready for a pandemic. I don't think anyone was, but one thing that the city will be in generations to come, if the city is faced with a pandemic before, there's going to be a guidebook, a rule book on what the city has to do to move forward. And we're going to be preparing and looking at things differently. In the 2016 Climate Ready Report, we mapped out how climate change will affect our most vulnerable populations. These are the same populations that are being the hardest hit by COVID-19. And the Green Ribbon Commission was a major supporter of that, so I want to thank you for that. To ensure that we continue an equitable recovery and that Boston gets to thriving again, we need to continue to focus on vulnerable populations. That's going to be key, and I've realized that. I knew that before this, but certainly it's put a big spotlight on it now. Climate action plays an important role in our long-term recovery efforts. I assure you that our work to cut carbon emissions, to cut down on waste, and to make our coastline more resilient continues. And in fact, it's more important probably now than ever, as I mentioned earlier, as we think about using this as an opportunity. Our work with the carbon emissions performance standards also continues. Chief Cook is going to speak more on this, and we'll rely on the Green Ribbon Commission's support for this important initiative as we move forward here. Right now, we're exploring options to allow better social distancing and to make sure everyone has a healthy and safe transportation options. I was on a call last night with Steve Poftak, and I think that Steve did a really good job on the phone last night. I was really impressed with the plan that they've laid out for the MBTA, at least as far as reopening. And I think that we need to be rather than throw darts at a plan, we need to work with him and moving forward. We also are working with other healthy transportation options, improving walkability and bikeability in our busiest areas throughout the city. We know that making it easier for walking and biking will cut down on carbon emissions. During the last few months, the global emissions has fallen 17%, largely due to a reduction in cars on the road. Bringing our society back doesn't mean we have to bring back carbon emissions back as well. Now is the time to think big, get creative, and build a healthier worlds, quite honestly. We're also going to make some announcements today that I won't ruin it right now, but we're going to, well, ruin a little bit of it. We're going to be announcing some dedicated pilot, maybe bus lanes, maybe some more bike lanes in the city of Boston. We're going to have a little bit of community process, but so we'll see what happens. But pretty excited about that today, because I think that we can steal a lot of ideas, particularly from European countries, cities that have done some amazing things, and it works for them. And I think we can work here in Boston as well. I just want to say to the commission that I look forward to working with you and supporting all of us in the work of equity work. Long before I became the mayor, I said this before many times. You're probably bored of me saying it, but when I ran for mayor of Boston, the two largest forums that we had was the one on the environment and one on bikes. And to be honest with you, I knew a little bit about the work around climate change. I wasn't as into it as maybe some of the folks running for mayor were. But since I've been the mayor, I've had the honor of really understanding the importance of this work and how great it is. I've learned from almost every single person on the commission and watching your leadership on the commission. I look forward to us getting back together again so that we can continue to work together and use our collective efforts to reduce carbon, improve energy efficiency, create green jobs, and make sure that our world is a safe place to be. And I'm going to stop there. And I will, if you have some questions, I think that's what we're going to do here, but I'll take as many questions you want from anybody that wants to ask.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. And I want you to know that we accept your urging and suggestion. We're happy to partner with you, especially on the equity front as we continue with our climate work. We've already talked about that at length in the executive committee. Chris has been very much a leader on that front, and we are going to create something working with the city to move forward on that within our efforts. We have a couple of questions. I'll just kick one off, and then I think we'll go to whoever's got their hand raised. What is it about the impact of COVID that is actually right now today making climate work more challenging in the city?
I think it's the physical, social distancing, and I think that I do think it's important for us to continue to gather and meet and talk about how we move forward. My concern is, and I don't see it in this budget, my concern is that, the state's going to have a potentially between 15 and 20% reduction in revenue coming in. And my concern would be that, that when we have to cut certain aspects of the budget, that climate is one of those expendable, if you will, lists that get cut. And I don't think this is the time to do it. I think now is the time to make more investments. I think that's one of my concerns with the COVID. The second is the MBTA, transportation. I think how do we use this as an opportunity to make some of the changes that we have to make. I think that we have a moment in time right now to really implement some big ideas. I know it's opposite what you asked me as a question, but we have a moment in time right now to really institute and implement some really big ideas that we've been thinking about for a long time. I think we should.
Great. Heather Hendrickson, if you are still there, you're going to be unmuted right now. Heather, are you still there? Heather may have had to jump. She had her hand raised earlier from Harvard. All right, final question, because we're at the end of our time. What are the opportunities you see for us in the city of Boston to create green jobs and have climate-related, resiliency-related, mitigation-related projects ready to go and what are our chances of obtaining funding from the federal government?
Great question. Well, first of all, for the easy answer is energy retrofits. I mean, obviously, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'll talk about the city. I mean, we're about to go through our budget process. We're almost at the end of our budget process. And on the city side of the budget, there's probably going to be some reductions in certain areas that we're going to be making. We're not going to be laying people off or furloughing people, but we are going to be making some reductions because we're getting less revenue in. On the capital side, many of our climate ready projects are on the capital side. Those are all moving forward. And I think we're not going to lose momentum there. I think that it depends on what happens with the economy. Some of these buildings that are in the process right now of being designed and going to be approved at some point, there's some money mitigation in those projects for us to be able to put into Boston, the resilient Boston Harbor plan in certain areas. So my concern is, if we don't bounce back as an economy, does that slow down some of the planning that we have already done in the city and moving forward? So I'm concerned about that a little bit. I think that on the other side of it, I think that, you know, as we start to look at rules and regulations around green buildings, I think that we have to start thinking outside the box. No one ever imagined that a pandemic was going to happen. I mean, at least we didn't in the United States. We knew it would happen other places, but it wouldn't happen in Boston, in Massachusetts, in America. And I think right now is the time to start thinking bigger than we have been. And I think it's about how do we move some of this stuff forward. And I think that, you know, understanding what a threat to our society is. Obviously, the coronavirus is a threat to our society, but so isn't climate change. And climate change is a threat to our society. It could be longer lasting. We don't know how long coronavirus is going to last for, but it could be longer lasting and more substantial than what the coronavirus, the impact has had on America and on the world. I think there's 100,000 people, 100,000 people have died in America, 350,000 people have died in the world. And you think if you take the natural disasters that have happened or and could be happening in the next, say, 10, 15 years, that number could surpass that 350,000 deaths. So I think it's really incumbent upon all of us to look at this as an opportunity to be bolder. And certainly for me personally, you know, I think that it's been interesting. It's been a difficult time to be a mayor with people and making sure people are safe, but it's also been a opportunity or a unique time to be mayor because I've had a chance to lead, meaning working and laying down programming and laying down solutions and finding problems and fixing those problems. We have a new rule here in City Hall that you identify a problem and within 24 hours you have a solution to that problem. Because coronavirus doesn't let you wait 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 2 years or 5 years to come up with an answer. You have to come up with an answer within 24 hours. Now it might take a week to implement that answer, but we have 24 hours. That's how we start our morning every day with what's called the crisis response forum. We do a look back at the last 24 hours. We look ahead at the next 24 hours. And we bring up problems and tackle those problems on the phone. Those problems could be anything from technology to get Wi-Fi hotspots to our kids, or it could be how do we set up 65 food locations around the city. And then a month ago, we said we're having a big issue with adults hunger. And we set up another 8 sites across the city that we've already distributed over 100,000 meals. So those are the things that I think we have to start thinking of.
That is a sobering, thoughtful note to end on. We will think bigger, we will be bolder. Thank you so much for taking the time this morning to be with us. I know your schedule is incredibly demanding and we really appreciate it.
I appreciate